Well, welcome back. We continue with our look at the situation at Eskom. The power utility has announced that stage 4 load shedding might continue until after Wednesday, saying that industrial action by workers has further exacerbated the situation. As we mentioned, planned maintenance and repairs therefore being impacted. Energy expert Dirk De Vos is director with strategic consultancy QED Solutions. He joins us to speak a little bit more about this. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So, as I was mentioning, the problems that Eskom is experiencing at the moment, which it also pointed to the delay in the delivery of fossil fuels and coal, saying that that is beyond its control. Some of these issues, I know there are myriad of it, which some people are saying it needs a wider stakeholders to be involved. Are we looking at a short-term or medium-term problem with regards to this stage 4 that we're experiencing?
Look, it's very difficult to make any kind of prediction, and mostly because we're sort of sitting on the sort of very edge. At some point, the capacity is sufficient so that we don't have load shedding, or we have very low levels of load shedding, and on the other side, you know, it's a very sort of narrow, acute point at which we get quite a lot of load shedding, like we're doing now. So, you know, small issues like the industrial action might well have a bigger impact than it needs, than we would otherwise expect, because there's absolutely no reserve in the system anymore. And so any kind of unforeseen problem is going to have and exacerbate the problems. And that's really the real issue. We are living in a system which is very, very constrained.
I mean, there was a commitment just in terms of the risk mitigation independent power producers program to ensure that there is a greater generation capacity, self-generation, you know, others have pointed out that part of the challenges that have been experienced, even though the business constituency has committed to expediting procurement, is getting access to the grid and certain framework for wheeling. Can you chat to us a little bit more about some of these challenges, and do you agree that they are an impediment?
Well, there have been an impediment, and there is available generating capacity that can come on quite quickly. Not a lot, but there is significant. And as I said, it's really, you know, we're just talking about a couple of megawatts either way that can make a big difference. Wheeling would help, but we haven't made much progress on what the terms and conditions under which wheeling would happen. Like, what would your grid fees be? How much would Eskom need to charge for the use of its grid for people who might be able to wheel? You know, that is both buyers who are keen to buy additional capacity and sellers who could come on in the short term to sell that capacity. There's a lot of institutional blockages in Eskom, and they're historical and haven't been addressed. And what I sometimes fear is that we are now just sort of running around trying to sort of find any kind of solution that would get us through the week, where the actual problems need to be considered carefully. You mentioned earlier the emergency procurement program. That was supposed to be an emergency procurement program that would happen in the short term, but it's going to take a long time, and a lot of the participants and those who won the first round in terms of being able to say, well, now we can proceed, didn't in fact get to the point where they are able to supply the grid. So that was a little bit of a disappointment for all concerned. And we need to think about why that particular tender process was, I think, unsuccessful and avoided in future.
I mean, we'll talk about some of the more historical problems in just a moment, but I do want to talk about the Electricity Regulation Amendment Bill and the restructuring and unbundling of Eskom. That was said to also help bring about greater relief. Is there any evidence that there is headway that has been made, an impactful headway?
I think that we will be making a lot of headway before the actual day-to-day conditions of load shedding as we experience today are addressed. So you need to make quite a lot of headway on an institutional level before we see the results of those. I mean, we must remember that Eskom is one of the biggest electricity utilities in the world still. And it's a slow-moving and the decisions that get made and get implemented take a while to be carried out, and when they are carried out, they take a while to impact on the amount of generating capacity or the performance of the grid. So it's not, a decision that you make today has an impact tomorrow.
I mentioned earlier on about the social compact that many stakeholders have made in acknowledging that some of these problems are not just Eskom's problems. So the unbundling and restructuring can help better streamline Eskom, but will it help it have better relations in dealing with some of these things? We're talking about illegal connections, debt recovery, managing tariffs, tackling corruption, better communication and transparency around load shedding schedules. Are we winning on those fronts?
I think I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about that, and it's an interesting thing that where we are facing level 4 load shedding and perhaps worse, and in a sense it concentrates everybody's minds. So there is a lot of gaming and positioning before that, but when something as serious as this is happening, I think it does concentrate minds in saying we really are in a very, very bad position, and we need to get out of the situation, and we need to find each other. And perhaps before this point, when it isn't so serious, people would be talking and looking after their own constituencies, and politics plays a potentially bigger role. And I think now that we are in the situation we are, that there is a scope and an opportunity now for a social compact, maybe not even in formal terms, but really just a recognition that we are in a very, very serious situation, and we need to think very carefully and maybe throw out our predispositions of ideology or what our own interests are to solve this problem.
Just before you go,
and it can only be on that basis.
Before you go, I just want to look at the current industrial action. Could Eskom be thinking a little bit more creatively on how to deal with workers' demands? Because part of the bigger plan is to include workers in the objective of the just transition. And I'm just looking at some of the commitments it made in terms of decommissioning power stations. Could they include workers in that, find a way to make it more inclusive and make sure that they benefit? Agrivoltaics in small scale renewable generation while combining agriculture and upliftment programs. Is there a way that workers can benefit from this without Eskom necessarily needing to take money out of its purse? Can they be thinking more creatively?
Well, I think that there has been a measure of increased creativity and solution-oriented thinking in Eskom. And the question is Eskom credible? And what do the workers and the unions think about these plans? The unions have been in a very strong position historically in Eskom, and they been able to exert considerable influence on wages and so on. And I do think that that power is diminishing, and the transition is going to be difficult. And I don't think we should be lying to ourselves that this is going to be a sort of an easy transition where there won't be losers. There will be losers. I do think that the crisis that we are facing, as I've said before, will potentially help us be more serious and to start to think about how we get across to the other side.
Okay.
And I don't think we've done that up to now. So look, it's hard. I think that there are gaps, but I think there's a dawning realization, not just amongst Eskom workers, but South Africans in general, that we do need to do something, and it needs to be. We need to stop just talking our own book.
All right, I really appreciate your time and your insights. Energy expert Dirk De Vos, he is director with strategic consultancy QED Solutions, just speaking to us about the crisis to Eskom and how to resolve it and how much progress has been made.